Dan.
Oh, I think Dan is being an attendee, so I will.
Dude, I moved him. I already did it.
Oh, I moved him first.
I moved him first. Hey, we're recording. Kurtz, we're recording, and I'll let everybody know right now. Scott just texted Kurtz and I that Linnea is feeling under the weather. Linnea is his daughter, and he's trying to solve some problems with some parent stuff to be able to be on the webinar. But right now, he's doing his number one role of being Papa Scott instead of joining us on the webinar. Hopefully, he's going to join us soon. But Kurtz, we didn't have a lot of time to brainstorm, but which one of us is pretending to be Scott and which one of us is pretending to be Kurtz?
Oh, I got to stand. If I'm Scott, I got to stand up.
and the kind of hold the computer looking down at you?
Yeah. You should probably pretend to be Scott, not me. But I think we can hold it down and he'll join us if and when he can. So a lot of folks have been with us for a couple days now. So welcome back, or welcome in general. Really exciting news to get started. We've raised more than $9,800 for Camp Stomping Ground, which is crazy. Woo! That I'm not supposed to say crazy anymore. Oh, I'm so sorry. Which is wild. And I'm just really proud and excited. And I was talking to my dad about it on the phone earlier today and crying a little bit about Camp Stomping Ground and how cool it is, which is a little embarrassing. Maybe I should talk to my doctor. But it is true. It's such an inspiration and so cool to see the camp community rally around Jack and Laura. And today we have Nelson and Laura up first, and then we have Andy Pritikin and Steve Maguire up at 3. So hopefully you can hang with us for the entire day. But I think everyone knows me and Jack at this point. But I'd love for Nelson and Laura to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who they are, what they do, and then we can get into our important topic today about racial diversity in camp leadership. So Nelson, would you mind introducing yourself first, and we'll go from there? Thank you.
My name is Nelson. I'm currently the camp director at YMCA Camp Burkett of the YMCA of Ann Arbor. And I just love camp. I've been a part of a lot of camps in my past, from Cassons to 4-H camps to Dragonfly Forest, which is my home, which is a camp that Scott and Sale were directors of. Currently, in my off time, I do a lot of just talking about Black people in camp, essentially, and what that looks like and what it looks like to kind of go through the entire process of it. And that started kind of back at Tri-State this past year when we just kind of did our own little Black people panel, and just kind of but yeah, that's a little bit about myself. And overall, I'm just a huge camp person and love everything that Jack and Laura are doing.
Cool. Welcome, Nelson. Thank you for being here. Laura.
Kurtz, I also am just feeling pretty overwhelmed with all of the support and really grateful. It's been amazing. I was trying to tell a friend what we were all up to and how this kind of all got started, and got really emotional as well, thinking about how important the community of camp people is and how people can come together. And I'm overwhelmed by and feeling very grateful as well. So thank you all for being here. My name is Laura. I work at Stomping Ground with Jack. And I'm currently living in New York and finishing up a master's degree in social work.
Laura's super humble. She goes to Columbia, which is pretty cool. So I'll just put that out there. And then Jack and Laura always say they work at Stomping Ground, which is so cute and such a community building way to phrase it, but they invented it. So there's that. So okay, welcome, Laura. All right, so let's get started. Let's get into our topic. Nelson, you said that you've been working a lot in your spare time about discussing about what it means to be a Black person in camping. I don't remember exactly how you phrase it, but what does it mean? Let's just start there with some of your initial musings and perspective.
Well, I mean, I mean, in the clearest terms, like in most places you go, in the camp world, um, if you're not white, you're a minority, right? I'm not saying everywhere. Well, not even you can say like this call, but you can also even just say like the entire panel itself, right? Like I don't know who else might be a person of color, but it's very kind of noticeable that there's one. Um, but like you get used to kind of fitting in, and you kind of learn how to code switch, and I do a lot of talking with a lot of my friends just all the time, just in casual conversation about code switching and kind of what that means to them. um, and it was just interesting because I think that a lot of people think code switching is like just to or okay, so to many of the to my black friends that I'll talk to when I mention code switching, they instantly think like talking white or whatever that means to you. And then I'll kind of press them on it and be like, well, do you talk differently to your grandmother than you do to like your friends? Like, do you consider that code switching? Like, do you talk differently to kids than you do an adult? Right? Is that so? If you're still switching your language, and I kind of get into this thought of like, it's really about the language and how people communicate, and like that's like kind of what makes you feel comfortable. And like, it's a lot of learning new languages, so to say, when you go into different camp spaces in general.
So Nelson, when you say that you, so code switching has like a lot of negative and positive connotations, I think, depending on who you're talking to, right? There's a lot more that goes into it than just like a word, like a book, right? So when you think about code switching and you talk to your black friends about coming to camp and code switching, how do you try and describe what that looks like for you in camp or in different camps or in different like white spaces?
I think I think what happens is people tend to focus on like one aspect of like what I would consider code switching, and it's usually just like the words that you're saying or like how you say them and things like that. When really there's a lot. It's like the way you move, the way you talk, the way you go about your business is all a part of code switching. Where like an example of that is something that I know that I do, right? And that I'm sure that probably anybody from any kind of specific group probably has a certain way of like just introductions, right? Where you definitely have like your normal horizontal handshake, right? But then you definitely have seen the one where it's a little curved up a little bit and you got the grip. So like just something like that is like how you naturally interact with people, and it's all about what do you think will make the other person feel more comfortable? Like, what do you feel more comfortable doing with that other person? Right? Some people, like, you definitely know that they're going to want that horizontal handshake. They're going to want that hello. And some people are going to want that what's up. And like those people you're a little closer with maybe or not.
I think you brought up a key point there, Nelson. Like you said, when you're in a camp space, sometimes you're the person maybe who's always trying to like read what is going to make everybody else feel more comfortable because they're already in a space where they kind of feel that way. And so it's like that trying to fit in, but also trying to figure out how to like not point out differences necessarily all the time until you get to know people better in those spaces. Would you say that's true?
I think definitely. I think like, and like I'm seeing a lot of the hidden curriculum, and like I actually just rewatched the video like 3 times yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say there's a lot of like just hidden curriculum that like comes, especially in a camp space where you already have like one, it's just a whole nother world than like the quote unquote real world. But on top of that, there's so many other layers to it that you're constantly asking yourself like what is okay, right? Mm-hmm. What is going to make me kind of like, I can still be myself, but I'm not going to want to be like, I don't want to be labeled as that guy or like that black guy or like that whatever guy.
Watching, and we all do this when we're in different or new spaces. Like I'm thinking about like being at a conference for the first time and never having been there before. You don't have any friends yet. You don't like know quite where you fit in. You like kind of are more aware of how you interact or like how you show up in that space than you might be instead of like when you show up at your grandma's house for Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's work. It's like exhausting. Yeah.
Definitely.
I was going to mention that the code switching work happens at every level in camping, right? Like we're talking about Black folks in general, but campers are doing that, junior counselors, staff, you're a camp director, Nelson, like, you know, you're speaking from kind of like the very top.
So many different languages at this
in
point.
Camping. Yeah, right. So, so I wonder, because the topic today is like in summer camp leadership roles, can we talk a little bit about that trajectory of camper to director and why, you know, camps have certain percentages of Black campers, and I think that lots of times those percentages are really low if we compare the population in general where the camp is pulling from. I mean, Ann Arbor, I ran the overnight summer camp there. Our percentage of Black campers was much lower than the percentage of Black folks in the general population in Ann Arbor. So that's kind of a mismatch to start with. But then if you move up through the ranks into summer camp leadership, I feel like the ratio goes down, down, down even more. And that's anecdotal. I don't have the numbers there, but talk with me about, it's safe to say, right? Like anecdotally, we see the numbers because it's so obvious. But like what the heck is happening? You know, if we have even a certain number of Black campers who love camp, what's going on in those years in between?
So I first want to kind of start off by saying that it's like you could also argue like the converse, because it's more so I think people just enjoy being around people that look like them. I think that's pretty safe to say, and that I say this because out of the camps that I go to, it's either predominantly white or predominantly Black with like some other races mixed in, or it's predominantly Latino or predominantly whatever population it is. It's usually predominantly that. So it's not that there aren't many Black leaders or there aren't many other race leaders. It's just that they are kind of sticking to their camps and they're kind of serving with their communities and their populations. And like the example of that is like even in the place that I work, like we have my camp is predominantly white and has predominantly white leaders, but maybe an hour drive away, also part of the Ann Arbor YMCA, is our camp out in Ypsilanti, and most of those leaders out there are Black, and most of the kids there are Black. And I think it has a lot to do with kind of just wanting to kind of serve your own population, as well as like you get that feeling of community a bit more with people that you know can share experiences like outside of camp as well as within Camp Row. And when those things start to blend, I think that's when you get like a deeper connection to camp in general. And I think that's really what keeps people along in camp, is like those deep emotions that people feel. And I was listening to the webinar on Monday, and there was a lot of talk about just making connections and kind of deepening that connections, and how do we do that among like the children in the middle. And I think that that's safe to say with just specific populations, those connections are definitely getting strengthened if I can not only enjoy this great game of Gaga Ball with you, but then after I can talk about like that new Kanye album, or like that those J's that just came out. And then like those connections are getting even stronger and deeper outside of camp, right? That's like a spitting example is that my roommate, Donovan, I've known him for 10 years, and that's like probably the deepest connection at camp I've ever made. And that's because like not only did we make a connection at camp, but we were able to make that connection outside of camp because our culture's kind of aligned as well.
Right.
So I think like to answer your question in terms of like where you see that dwindle off, it's that at the camper base, you're not able to make those deep of connections because there just aren't enough of you to make those connections, right? So then like statistically, naturally, people are going to drop off all the time. And if your the connection to camp isn't as strong as say your white counterparts who have had like 50 to 60 other people that they've had the opportunity to make a connection with that's deeper than just camp, they're more likely to continue hanging out at your camp and working at your camp and going to leadership roles than say your other minority population.
Well put. I like that. Jack, you look like you were going to say something.
Nelson always gets me going on so many ideas. I sit and listen to Nelson talk a lot. But okay, so we're talking, I want to think about kind of like oscillating back and forth between like high level conversation around like, what does this look like? Why does this matter? That, and what are some like specific tangible ways that we can try to make our camp spaces, if they tend to be mostly white spaces where more people might feel more comfortable, specifically more Black folks might feel more comfortable. We've seen at Stomping Ground over the last 5 years, we have dramatically more people of color coming to camp now, working at camp now than when we started. The percentages are way better I think better because I care about that than when we started. And as a result, we've changed pieces of the program or the way we think about things or the way what we ask people to do. We've changed it because we've noticed that we were looking at it from like a very white perspective, like on whatever the many things. So Nelson or Laura, can you tell us about some little things maybe that could make kind of a bigger difference than, this high level idea of like, we should try and find ways to bring people together that are like totally different from each other. And that doesn't happen in most places in the world. So, but all of a sudden we can do it at camp and wave a magic wand and like save the world. Like that's not going to happen, but can we make some tiny adjustments or medium adjustments that'll have kind of like a disproportionate return?
Nelson and I had a chance to chat on the phone the other night together. So a lot of these, I'll just throw it to you in a second, Nelson, because this is all kind of stuff from that conversation that you'd brought up. But I think you mentioned something important, Jack. It's just like, note, like there's a way to kind of notice whiteness and not have it be what's normal necessarily, that it's like, I think being intentional about that is a way to start being intentional about how you think about programming or how you think about marketing, and all of that trickles down to the like actual experience that campers and staff have at camp. So yeah, Nelson, I'll throw it to you, but we talked a lot about being intentional about inclusion in terms of like simple programmatic changes that you might make. But before we do that, I just want to make a plug. Nelson is starting a company called See the Color, and it's an incredible opportunity for camps to have a cultural assessment done of their program, their kind of layout, the marketing, all of the intentional ways that folks might reach out to staff or think about looking at different ways to market to campers or families. And I think Nelson brings a very critical, intentional lens to it, but also like a wealth of camp experience, and has has seen several different camp programs and different kinds of camp programs, and has a very critical lens for how we all might be missing stuff or not thinking about stuff in the most intentional way. And so you kind of think about stuff through that level. I just wanted to say it's an awesome resource for all kinds of camps to take advantage of.
Is that?
Yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, I got it. That's awesome.
We were talking the other night about
no, we definitely.
But that's an intentional way that you could do it. You can, I mean, whether it's Nelson, who obviously we love and recommend, or it's someone else, putting money toward, putting effort toward an outsider to come in and do an audit is a great tangible takeaway, right?
And I think there's a lot of people who are offering or workshops you can attend to, do unconscious bias training, or bring in somebody to talk about like diversity and inclusion and equity, like with your staff. But the idea of having somebody come and like look at everything at camp through like that cultural assessment lens, I think is unique and different. It's exciting. But some of the stuff we talked about the other day, Nelson, was like thinking about like food and music and that kind of stuff. Maybe you can speak more on that.
Yeah. So, like definitely, like I think if you're looking at like just figure out like what it is about my camp that may be a deterrent, what may not be attractive to certain populations. Like, why are these populations not coming to my camp, right? Like, just find somebody from that population that you trust and then ask them, right? That's like the biggest thing. And I think like a biggest part of it is just involving parts of like just other cultures into your camp. And like the crazy part is that like and I had this thought where it's almost, and maybe a little, I don't know, I believe in it. But if you're running a specialty camp for someone with a specific condition, say like so I've worked at camps with children with autism. And we would we would change our camp significantly to accommodate the needs of them, where we might not be as loud, or we had a lot more visuals and things like that. And it wasn't necessarily that all of the campers there needed it, but it definitely made people feel more comfortable knowing that they were being thought of and that like the invitation was there. And then my idea wrapped around that is like, is it possible to do that same thing for minorities, right? Is it possible to do that kind of same thing where you're intentionally adding parts of their culture as an invitation? And it's almost like, is that racist? I don't think so. I think if your intentions are there and it's more of an invitation and you're doing it as a comfortability, then it's more so just efficient and thoughtful to make people feel more comfortable in your space as a camp for all. And like that's to go like, right, like just even so an example of that is something that I remember and it sticks in my head a lot. And it's something that Jack did. And he probably doesn't even know it had this big of an impact because I've never told him until just now. But we were doing some kind of training together, and he was playing music, and he turned on Missy Elliott, and it was like some old 2003 Missy Elliott song. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and just shrugged, and I was like, okay, all right, because like I mean, normally in a camp space, I'm used to hearing like the Avid Brothers and like nothing wrong, I love the Avid Brothers, like they're great. But like I'm used to hearing like a lot of pop, and like oftentimes like things like hip hop are like not normally okay in like certain camps environments. Like it's like just instantly kind of dismissed. Whereas like hip hop is a huge part of Black culture, right? It's not a stereotype. It just is a part of Black culture, where hip hop is Black culture. So like to hear something from my culture is like in a space that I'm not normally used to. It's like, oh, this automatically just got so much more respect for Jack, just for like making me feel more comfortable whether he knew it or not. So like small things like music and like the kind of music you play, reassessing like what you allow at like your camp schmances or dances or things like that. Reallowing what you kind of eat for dinner, right? Like is like if you just added one like traditional Latinx meal or culture meal from like whatever culture that is, or South Pacific Islander meal, just in your rotation, right? I guarantee you that you might not see that impact immediately, but like people will notice. Like people will see that and they will be like, oh, this feels like home. I have that connection now. This resonates with me, and I like this place so much more.
Right. I'm thinking about I like both of those points a lot. I think I'm thinking at Stomping Ground about how often we play music. Like we play music at the end of meals in the dining hall. We play music at the waterfront for like 2.5 hours. We play music during ball field. And I'm talking about like on big loud speakers where like most of camp can hear what's being projected. And I think last year we started having counselors put in playlists that they were excited about, or like make suggestions for playlists, and giving some more choice and voice to people who, instead of it just being the program director who, you know, might listen to the Taylor Swifts and the whatever, like whoever it is, or whoever, just because it's what, like, how can we give more voice and choice? And I think one really awesome thing that happened last summer that was kind of an accident, but really fun, is we had, during one of the open ball fields, we had a group of kids do like an open mic, and they also just ended up being DJs for that hour and a half. And it was so fun to kind of watch this this group of boys kind of run the show and then play the music that they wanted to, and everybody kind of got into it and knew all the words. But it was definitely like the majority of the Black kids at camp that week like came down and like joined in on this thing, and it was exciting to like it just felt like a really choiceful space in a different way, I think, which was cool.
Nelson, I know you don't speak for all of anyone or any of that stuff, but can I hit you with some stuff that we're struggling with at Stomping Ground, and you can just like give us your take on it, and then people can just like listen in on what they think might be useful?
For sure.
Are you trying to get free consulting
and then,
right now?
It's cool. I'm going to say I'm an invoice in a minute. So.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I want you to start recording the hours here.
and then Nelson, maybe we can let some other people throw some questions in the chat and we can answer them as it might make sense. And Laura, I want your take on this too, because you're obviously getting a different perspective on what the like kind of like social justice left is looking at the world through the lens of social responsibility at social work school, right? Like,
right.
Laura definitely opened my eyes to like so many new avenues just during our like 2-hour talk on Monday. Mm-hmm. And so many more resources and stuff like that. So
wait, full disclosure, you two talked for 2 hours on Monday. This is hilarious. You're like, yeah, Nelson and I like got together and had a little chat. Come to find out you just geeked out for 2 hours.
I promise you none of the other panelists talked to each other for 2 hours before their call.
Classic Lauren.
Well, some of it was just chit-chatting about random stuff.
Okay, sure.
All right, but wait, this is my question. I got a whole bunch of questions.
Sorry.
Let me start with one. So what we found is that you said like people that know each other like to hang out with each other, and people that look like each other know each other and hang out. They have similar cultures and stuff like that, right? So at our camp, we've grown almost entirely based on word of mouth, which means that people sign up for camp together, right? So what we see at Stomping Ground, and I'm not sure what I think about it, is that we have weeks that oscillate, back to oscillate, Kurtz, that's for you, between like very white weeks and weeks that are like much more like half and half, right? Half and half between white people and people of color. And the cultures of those weeks are different. And I'm sure you saw this at Dragonfly when you had Sickle Cell Week or Autism Week or whatever. And I'm not sure how much as an organization to mess with that. Like, do we, I don't know. This is something we're wrestling with. Do we try to make it so that the weeks are more even? Do we, what happens if we end up with a couple of weeks that are like 80% white folks and then another week that's like 80% black folks? Do we care? Do we just
then you just have a camp that's 80% white folks and a camp that's 80% black folks, and they're getting along, and you're running a system camp and everybody's having fun. But like, I think like that's like going to be the same at any camp, right? Like who isn't, like what kid isn't like at this point texting their friend like, are you going to camp? Like, what week are you going? What session are you going? Oh my God, what bunk are you in? Oh, what cabin are you in? Right? Like, or like even your staff, like it's like, oh, are you gonna apply to work at this camp this year? And it's like, yeah. Oh, are you gonna apply for the whole summer? Or are you gonna apply for like just these weeks? I was like, well, I can only make these weeks. Well, I was like, all right, well then I'm only gonna apply for these weeks, right? So like that kind of goes back to that like same connection where like naturally those connections are gonna be made between like certain populations. And I'm not saying that I'm not making connections with anybody else at the camp, but I'm just saying that I can almost like wholeheartedly say that without a doubt that there's going to be a bit more connections being made outside of camp that are like leading to them wanting to work at camp with each other. And like any camp can relate to that, right? Like everyone, like if you're a camp director by now, you know that if you're getting Johnny, right, you're getting Jimmy, Jammy, and Junie all together, right? Like you're getting the package deal. If you get the one, you're getting the other two, and that's going to be the same for like any group. As well. So I wouldn't mess with it personally. Like that's just my opinion. I think what I would do is I would ask and just see like, hey, right? Like I think if you're noticing this and like just acknowledge it, right? Find somebody that you know on the staff that like, because if you're noticing it, odds are like the 80% of white people or the 80% of the black people also notice it. Like that no one's going like, all right, there's like there's no black people. Like no one's gonna ignore that. Like everyone sees it whether they say it or not. So I think just find somebody and ask them, be like, hey, like, why do you think this is? Or like, do you guys like link up before like you come to camp? Like, it's like, I don't think it's going to be like too ridiculous to ask that question because it's like not untrue, right? If you're saying there's 80% of black people and like really it's like 3, right? Maybe don't go in there and ask. But I think if it's clearly like these are a large percent of black people, right? Like why do you guys like this week at camp so much? Like why, like what brings you here? Like what is it? And it's like they'll probably end up saying, they could say like, oh, my buddies were coming, so I came. Or they could be like, I don't know, this is the only week that has like no rain. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I haven't read this book, but I'm posting it in the chat. I've heard that it's I think Sylvia might have been the person that recommended it to me, but it's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum. And I think it gets to what you're asking, Jack, and kind of what you're talking about, Nelson. And you also started talking about in the beginning about like, you just are, I think there's a intention sometimes we have to like help people make friends with each other, but it's okay that like, the people who connect on that identity, on that core identity level are going to be friends with each other faster or quicker or whatever. And we should just like celebrate that and not try and, kumbaya with everybody all the time. I know that's not what you're saying, Jack. And I also feel that stress too, because I think there's, for the folks of color that we have on staff, it's like very noticeable to them as well. And so trying to figure out like what is causing that and how we can be intentional about it and not try and change it just for us, but for the people who are coming to camp or working at camp.
I would say that absolutely one of the most memorable experiences from my like beginning counseling career when I was at Dragonfly was every night after the day was over, you kind of just knew that on the second floor, all the way to the left where the couches are, that's where all the black people would be, right? All the black people would be there. And like, we all knew, like, it wasn't like, no one said like, hey, you come to like, it wasn't like, hey, you come to the couches and no, I just said we went there because we knew that we could have conversation about whatever we want. And it wasn't like, if you weren't black, you couldn't come. Like, it was definitely like whoever wanted to come hang out with us, we could, but you definitely knew that a majority of like whatever on staff were going to work there.
Right.
And just have good conversation with like, I don't know, you just felt comfortable. And it wasn't like we were trying to be like exclusive or like didn't want to hang out with anyone else, right? There were some nights where like people didn't come to the couches and no one was like, oh, where were you at? Like, why weren't you hanging out with your own folk? Like, that's not how it goes.
But everybody should have an opportunity to like hang with their people and the people that they share an affinity with. And especially if you're in a space where you're not the majority, to kind of have that community is important. I agree.
Well, so let's leave it. But I was just gonna say, as white camp directors, we have to change our mindset, right? Because as a white camp director, I would be like, this is bad, like, there's segregation at my camp, right. Why aren't all the counselors friends with each other, right? It'd be like really right. easy to take those leaps and to be able to step back and see, here's friendships forming. Right. This is really great. There's an affinity group. Would I like to see more instances where staff break down any sort of clique or affinity group and make connections across, traditional lines? Yes. And like, I don't need to freak out because of
mm-hmm.
it. Or be weird because of it. Like, it actually
right.
could be a really good thing.
Right. Yeah, I think that you bring up a good point, Chris. It's like noticing why that is alarming to you and what is your intention in trying to fix it. Is it for you or the way things look, or is it like going to actually benefit the people who you're
well, and same with thinking about camper stuff. Like, a lot of times, to be blunt, we show or represent diversity to appeal to white parents. Maybe that's like a harsh thing to say. But I think sometimes if we see the black campers all together, we think, well, what effect is this having on the white kids? And that's not necessarily the mindset we need to have either. So like, as you said earlier, Laura, like recognizing our own whiteness, if we are a white camp director, and how that inputs, our decision-making, and how I might make a decision centered around the fact that I'm white because that's who I am and that's what I'm used to. That might be wrong. And so that's why, like, our original topic about, and this is such a big topic, but having more folks in camp leadership who are Black or other non-white folks is one of the only ways that camp can become better.
Right.
So I want to stick on this camp leadership thing and think about how do we make it easier for more camps to have more leadership with people of color, if that's what they're hoping for. And I know that's something that we are trying to do more of at Stomping Ground. And there's some realities that, like, Laura and I run Stomping Ground. Nobody else actually runs Stomping Ground, like, from the top. And we're a couple of white folks. So the representation of who's the actual biggest bosses at Stomping Ground will almost certainly be Laura and I for, like, quite some time. So that's
you invented it.
Yeah, so, like,
you're stuck with that. Yeah.
Right. So real talk, white people run this.
Right. And like, let's not fake it, right? So like recognizing it as true, I think.
Can't be like, actually, Nelson like sort of runs it, but he actually doesn't come. So we keep him in Ann Arbor, but he like runs it. Let's put that on the website. Right. So, in how Nelson, Laura, how have you looked at strategies to make it more likely that Black folks in particular, or people of color in general, will stick around and succeed in leadership roles that build them up the same way that anybody else? Like, at least for us, what we typically do is have people, they don't go from like being a counselor to being the program director. They're like a village leader, they're like a whatever, and kind of step up through those things. So when I think about it, I think about how do I lower those barriers for each level, or increase the likelihood that someone might want that job, or reach. How do I start to do that? What are some tactics that you've thought about doing, or that you've seen Scott and Sil do, or other folks do that make that work?
I think the first thing, like you guys are talking about, is like just acknowledging it, right? Like, right. Also, okay, scratch that. First thing I think is to stop trying to diversify your camp. I think the word diversity is like just this umbrella that like is like, who knows what diversity you're looking for, right? Like, figure out, like, decide like, hey, I kind of wish my camp had more Black people at it. I wish my camp had more Latinx people at it. I wish my camp had more non-binary people at it, right? Like, figure out exactly who it is that you're trying to target, because like, if you're trying to just diversify your camp, right, nothing is going to work for all of those populations, right? No one change you make is going to bring in all of these groups. Not one single change you can make. And if you figure that out, like, please tell me, because I would love to work with you. But right, like, just kind of admit to yourself, right? It's gonna it might feel a little weird, it might feel a little uncomfortable, right? Saying like, I really wish I had some more Black people on camp, right? Like, it sounds a little bit like if it's true, then just kind of acknowledging yourself, find that kind of inner peace, and then do the research to kind of learn the language that I was talking about, like, learn the language of, like, learn the culture, learn like, what is it that might attract them, right? Like, you kind of already figured out like what attracts like whoever's already at your camp. So like, right, so a quick suggestion would be like, where are you even advertising at, right? Are you advertising where these people would even be at typically? I've never seen a camp advertisement in a barbershop, right? Like, and that's like, I guarantee, like, I could go to any of my friends and like, that's just another part of the culture, is that like barbershops, right? You mentioned my cut when I first came in here. That's the first thing I did when I came back from New Jersey, is go get my hair cut. Like, where are you advertising? Are you advertising in the places that these people even go? Do you have the resources at your camp to kind of make them successful, right? And then, are you appreciating them? Are you appreciating and acknowledge the fact that they are representing a certain population, right? The things that make me feel the best is that when parents come up to me and be like, hey, like, I'm so glad you're here. There like aren't many people that look like my son, right? And like, it's so great to have a role model like that. And just saying, like, just tell them that you appreciate them and like what they're doing, and kind of acknowledge the fact that you are a minority, and like, have that conversation with them, and like, hey, how can I help you better fit in? How can I help you better fit in? And then how can I make you more successful?
I mic drop. That was great, Nelson. I think I was thinking about two things while you were talking. One, I think we as camp directors who want to bring folks of color up through the chain of command and have more leadership and power at camp, I think it starts with giving some of that democratic decision-making power to like our maybe frontline staff or the folks that are in even like team programming or LIT, CIT programming. How can we start the conversation about sharing the decision-making power and making like a space where you feel like your voice and your choice in different matters around camp. It could be like little things or big things. It could be like the menu. It could be the playlist at the waterfront. Those kinds of things, I think, go a long way in doing more than just stating. It's like taking an action step towards like saying you belong here and your opinion matters about things. And we value that enough at that level that you feel like, okay, well, this is a place that is going to recognize me and what I bring to the table more than like another job potentially. And then the second thing I was going to say was, I think also, Nelson, you talked about this a little bit, but like there's a personal connection piece too, like working on your own, not only like why you're hoping to change up your leadership staff and trying to figure out like what that does and how that benefits you and your camp or the people that you're hoping to bring in, but then also how you are going to show up and create a personal connection with those people. That's going to go, like, that's what we do no matter what with the folks that we really want to bring in to like run the inner circle of like leadership staff. But I think like really focusing on what those personal connections are going to be. Like, I loved your story, Nelson, of the Missy Elliott with Jack, but I think we can go so much more to like make that first step and focus on those personal relationships.
Absolutely. I agree with what you said.
Do we have thoughts from the participants or the other folks?
Yeah, I guess we didn't say early on, and there is some activity in the chat, but if you have questions or things to add in, we're keeping an eye on the chat, so please submit those. Elise was, I was having like a little side conversation, but Elise was saying, you know, she has campers who are from white families, and they comment that they don't want to be in a cabin of campers from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Like, whoa, really tough to deal with, because a big part of me just wants to tell that family, like, too bad, get lost, right? And that's maybe fine to say. And that camper probably like could really benefit from a week at camp with adults who can be really positive role models for them, right? So, but your main priority is protecting kids, staff who might be most vulnerable, right? So we don't want to, I don't know, it's a side conversation, but it is this kind of dance that I think lots of camp directors do. You know, how much of a stance do I take? What seems political? What doesn't? Thinking about hiring, like, you know, people have different thoughts around affirmative action and what that means and the ethics of that. You know, and camp directors are just trying to please a lot of different parties. So even if you believe one particular thing or you have a particular agenda, Stomping Ground is so beautiful because Jack and Laura and their team get to do what they want, right? But you're working for a greater association or specific boss or the church or whatever, and suddenly you don't have that autonomy. So working within systems out of your control, I think puts more complexity on some of these goals that Nelson was sharing earlier. Like, you know, I want to get more non-binary or more Black or more Latinx campers to my camp. So that's what's going on in the chat.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if in those kind of situations, if it's possible to kind of already have a like clearly written policy in place that's like, just like as a a like forethought for that, like, or a preventative measure for that, where it's like, okay, well, this is our policy, and you can just kind of point to that. I think if that would probably make the conversation a little easier, where like with a lot of other things, where oftentimes if a parent disagrees with me and we already have a policy in place, it's a lot easier to just point at this policy and say, hey, this is how we do things around here. And then it's less of like you saying, no, you can't come to my camp, but then they have the decision to make whether they want their camper at that camp. And oftentimes, at least in my case, parents usually go, I'd rather have my kid at camp than kind of my own personal, like they kind of usually subdue their own personal desires for the betterment of their child. So I would even almost advise, like, either if you do have one of those, like definitely utilize that, or even consider making one that's just as simple as saying like, hey, like we mix all diversities, or we diversify our cabins intentionally, or we, however you want to phrase it, but like have that in there where it's like we control how our cabins are situated and things like that.
So this is like, I hear like two themes that echo in this conversation and so many others, like expectation setting of what, our values and procedures, policies are. And then the other thing is option, choice, consent, right? So we're not like the understanding someone's culture and then creating opportunities for them, like the music discussion can be really good if it's choice-based or consent-based or just part of the fabric of camp. Versus where it can go really wrong, which is auto-enrolling kids into basketball because, they're Black or, whatever. Like you can
Kurt, are you on my soapbox right now?
Am I on your soapbox?
I
was saying choice and consent. Yeah, I've been hanging out with Jack way too much.
Are you just standing on my soapbox?
No, I am standing on your soapbox, but like this in many ways is the answer, right? So instead of making all the kids listen to the same music because that's what you like, or like it's offering lots of different foods and letting kids choose what they want and maybe observing what's popular during a certain week and maybe making more of that next time, or like everything should be a buffet. And this is great. You're going to like this. Everything should be a buffet. And it's up to you as a camp leadership what you're going to put on that buffet. But it shouldn't all be just the food, that food or whatever, metaphorically, that white people like, or that you've always done at camp because you've always done it like that, right? So I guess that's like what lever we have, like what we put on the buffet and what we tell people is on the buffet. So right. They don't get there and like get mad about X, Y, or Z. So there you go. That's the buffet is the new sandbox.
Choice and consent.
Well, just when you're done, just send that soapbox back to me. I think
I've got it on loan. So you'll have to ask. But I guess my question is for Nelson and Laura, like, what haven't we talked about that you talked about in your 2-hour conversation on Monday? Like, what things are we missing? What is something that you wish we had asked that we haven't asked yet? What else is on your minds?
We talked. Nelson, jump in and cut me off, but we talked a little bit about at the end we shared some resources back and forth, books, podcasts, videos. So I wonder if people would be interested in that. We can share some of those resources that have, at least some stuff that's been useful for me in the chat or in an email. Please share the resources. Cool, Abigail. What else did we talk about, Nelson? We also I
kind of want to just really quick answer this one question that I've read about how much of me, it comes from Isaac K. says, how much of me intentionally finding pictures of Asian and Indian kids is actually more racist than finding great pictures regardless of who was in them. I would say I would worry less about whether it's racist and more about whether it's false advertisement, right? Like if you're finding a bunch of pictures of Asian and Indian kids, but your camp and in your brochure, it's like 90% Asian and Indian kids, but your camp is only like 9% Asian and Indian kids, right? It's like a little bit of off-putting, right? Like you're selling something that really isn't there. So I don't think it's racist to display your demographic or display the diversity of your demographic, as long as it's like accurately representing what your camp actually is. So like so essentially, like I wouldn't find like the 3 Black kids that came to my camp and like make that my entire brochure. It's just them having a great time at camp if my camp is like 90% white.
Well, but wait, Nelson, can I push back a little bit? What if I'm aspirational about this? What if let's say like 20% of my kids that come to my camp are black kids, but I want to get to 30. Can I manipulate it a little bit to make it so that make sure people see? What's up, Steve? Make sure that people of color see, black people see that there's black people at camp a little bit more. Like, how do I if I want to grow my populations of
I don't think that's what Nelson's saying at all. I think Nelson's saying like it's okay to be intentional about, and I think we should be intentional about who's being represented on the website, and it can be more. I totally cut you off, Nelson, but I'm going to finish my thought and then I'll give it back to you. I think it is okay to be aspirational about it, and it is important to know. Like, there's a. How do I want to say this? There's like race is a thing, and being aware of that is not racist. I don't think, if that helps answer the question originally. But Nelson.
No, I agree with what you're saying in terms of like, and like I get the aspirational aspect where I think the aspiration, right? Like, I'm not going to say like you need to like measure out 20% of your photos, or like you need to have exactly 23% of like whatever. But I think you should definitely be cautious in how you present your camp, and how you sell it, because what'll happen is you'll end up selling this image of a camp that you don't actually have. And when people show up expecting one thing and getting another, you'll probably often find yourselves in more hot water than like you initially expected.
Yeah, so what you're saying is like, if I've got one black kid that comes to camp, don't put him on every brochure and try and tokenize that black kid at camp.
I'm gonna just hard honest truth. If you did that, right, just that specific example, and not to say like I know it's like an exaggeration, but like an example of that, right? The black people are gonna notice.
Yeah,
they're gonna be like, oh, that kid that kid is they only got one black kid that goes to this camp. Right? Like that's not going to go unnoticed. Like, and like, I can almost guarantee that every population is like, that is just something that's part of their culture, is that when you go to a place, you play the game. And if there's anybody that's black, that's a participant right now, we've all played the game where it's called find the black person. And that's just, you look around and see like who else is black in the room. That's it. That's a game that is like, and it's not, I don't know if it's a game necessarily, but that is something that is actually done. And it's not just like an imagination, like that is getting done. So I think like that's going to be something that's going to be extremely noticeable, where it's like your intentions are easily revealed just by like things like that. Whether it's like there's actually a good diversity at your camp, or like they're just pushing this for marketing, is very clear to tell to that actual population you're trying to get to.
For sure. Well, I love that. And we could talk about this for hours, and actually Nelson and Laura and Kurt and I actually have, and most of them just aren't recorded. But maybe we can record some more. Kurt, you'll just like show up with one of those like weird Alexa machines and listen to us talk.
Wait, what?
I don't know, dude.
Am I not invited? Do I have to hack in?
Yeah, Kurt, you gotta hack in.
Can we spend the last 6 minutes sharing? I know somebody said they would be resources would be useful. Should I post them in the chat?
Yeah, post them in the chat.
Post them in the chat, and then we'll also post them on the recorded, like the page with all the recorded webinars that goes out, so you can see those too.
Okay.
You'll see those in email, but post them in the chat. And we've got 5 minutes left. Nelson, where can people find out more about you? And is there anything you want to say as we sign off here?
They can find out more about me by just emailing me. Of course, with the See the Color, we talk a lot about kind of like finding that friend or finding that person that you trust that can kind of go and talk to these communities for you. And that's with myself, Donovan, my roommate, and James, actually, who you're about to see as all part of that team. So we're working on our website now, and hopefully we'll be good to go in 2020. You can find us at seethecolor.com. I believe we might not have that domain secured. I'm not sure yet. But also, like, I love just talking and asking questions that just like are on people's minds, and like asking difficult questions that like I might not necessarily have the answer to, and like maybe nobody does, and just kind of pondering and thinking about that. So if anyone is like really, really just trying to be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, hey, do you have any questions for me? Like things like that. I'd love to just chat. So like, shoot me an email at, should I write it in the chat? I can just write it first name.
And I think too, Nelson, you'll be presenting at some camp conferences.
Oh, I'll also be at Tri-State this year. I believe that I will be in Arizona in January for a nacho conference, and I'll be, what was the other one? I think it might be MAC. I believe it was MAC.
Yeah.
And MAC.
Well, and I would say if you are planning a conference, reach out to Nelson as well. Invite him in.
Cool.
Laura, where do we find you? Camp Stomping Ground.
Hey, nobody can invite Laura to conferences, though. She's got lots of work to do.
I will be at 2 of the 3 conferences that Nelson's going to. So that's exciting, Nelson. I'll see you there. You can find me at laura@campstompingground.org. And I am also happy to chat and talk and share thoughts, fully formed thoughts, or just musings and things you're interested about. So hope to hear from you.
Yeah, good. I think what I'd like to say as we conclude here is like, let's just keep this conversation going all the time. And Nelson said earlier, like, let's not just aim for diversity. I think a lot of times in staff training, we talk about this in Summer Camp Society a lot. We set aside 45 minutes for like a diversity talk, right? Which is kind of weird because in everything we do, we're dealing with individuals who are different from us, or folks who are coming in who don't understand our hidden curriculum, or to whom we haven't explained our hidden curriculum. So how do we integrate these types of conversations into all the decisions that we're making at camp, because it's not a standalone type thing? And then how do we leverage expertise from people that know more about it than us? And how do we say, hey, I kind of suck at this, I need help because I want to make it better. Like, instead of protecting our good intentions by not having an uncomfortable conversation, which I'm trying to get better at myself because it is hard. So Nelson, Laura, thank you so much. This was fun. And my brain hurts a little bit, which is a compliment and a good thing. So I think we have Steve Maguire and Andy Pritikin in the wings.
Very cool.
But I'm not so sure how to move them from the wings into the...
I can get Andy for sure.
Okay.
I'm moving him in.
And I need to... Okay, Nelson, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you later.
See ya.
Oh, wow, you did it. Okay, I need to refill my water bottle. So
Sure you do. Sure you do. Thanks, Laura. Love you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. All right, BRB.
Blah, blah, blah. Bye, Kurt. All right, Laura, I'm kicking you out. Nope, you kicked yourself out. Great work. Well,
okay,
what's up, Andy and Steve?
I'm gone.
What's going on, y'all?
Hi, Jack. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Steve. Nice headset. That's intense. Have your kids been playing a lot of video games?
That's all we have.
No, I love that.
It's the best. What's going on?
Hey, we're just finishing up talking about a little bit of getting some more Black folks in the leadership positions at camp.
Awesome.
And transitioning into hanging out with the two of you. Andy, you're on mute. I'm going to unmute you. Now you're back.
All right, cool. I was just saying that Steven's got to keep his kids at bay somehow. So, he's got a few of them.
That's correct. That's my parenting style. Very engaging.
Lock the door. But I took the headset.
That's correct. Can I plug Diet Coke? Is that okay? Ad placement?
Yeah, we actually get 30 cents a view as a result of that.
That's what I thought.
or a letter from a lawyer, one or the other.
Okay, I leave for like 45 seconds, and we need legal counsel.
Anarchy.
This is not good.
Steve put a Diet Coke into the screen, Sarah.
Like into the screen?
Well,
yeah.
Ad placement.
Oh, well, Steve. Gosh, that would have been really bad.
Right?
Have you ever heard of this product? Happy Camper?
No.
No.
So it's this company. They make this. It's a sort of herbal pill kind of thing. It'll make you feel good. It's called Happy Camper. So
it's
when
called
it came
drugs.
out, no, it's completely herbal and organic, and it's not like
But drugs can be herbal. So
yeah, I know, but this was like 20 years ago. So
okay. Thus.
this is like pre-CBD and everything. So yeah, I'm not quite sure, but they make some great merch. So I endorse the merch, not the product. The product was pretty much did nothing for me. I'm pretty happy camper anyway.
Well, probably because it's 20 years old.
No, I mean when I first got it, before the expiration date. Yeah.
I want to make a lot of jokes now about the other herbs that probably made it so you didn't feel those effects, Andy. But we're gonna move on.
This is a camp appropriate television show.
This is actually a stomping ground appropriate television show.
Hey, there are many camps where that is legal, and that is a webathon in itself.
Sarah, do you like my headset?
5, 4, 3, 2, ignition.
I just got a text. I got a text from an anonymous friend who is on the webinar, and she said, "Andy and Steve look like air traffic controllers."
Love it.
But Steve might be like higher up in the air traffic.
That's correct. I'm in charge.
Like Andy's more of like assistant air traffic controller, and Steve's like flying the big planes.
I'm just interning on Steve's plane. That's all.
Yeah, you have intern-sized headphones. Those look really heavy.
Very official. I can hear everything really well.
Oh my God, I have to say one other thing. It's like when you order something on Amazon, but you don't read the specifications and it comes and it's like really big or like really small. Like I saw these backpacks and I was like, oh my God, and they were like name brand. I was like, they're so cheap. And then I read the specs and they were 6 inches by 6 inches.
They're like a decoration for your tree.
Oh,
You're like, perfect.
I thought I found like a mega deal. So that's why Steve got the giant headphones.
It's Kurt.
All right, I'm starting.
Kurt,
well, we're talking today about
here?
making first impressions. That's one of our themes. So we were just exemplifying. Also, I think this might be the 11th hour this week that Jack and I have done webinars together because we're also running Summer Camp Society webinars. So who knows how this is going to go.
You're like Jerry Lewis at 10:30 at night.
Yeah, no,
at the
definitely.
telethon.
So just everyone, we've been talking about setting expectations so the expectations are set. But this will be fun because we have Steve and Andy in the house today and we want to talk about customer service. And I'd love to have a focus on kind of like those first 24 to 48 hours of the camp experience, thinking about how critical that is for customer service, just to kind of direct our conversation a little bit. If you are just joining us for the first time, I'm Sarah Kurtz McKinnon. I'm a camp consultant and trainer out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Scott Arizal and I got together with Camp Stomping Ground to host this webathon this week because Camp Stomping Ground, run by Jack Schott and Laura Kriegel, is a startup camp, I like to say, and they have gotten to the point where they're purchasing their own campsite. So they're a nonprofit, but now they've found their forever home, and they're kicking butt raising capital to do it. But Jack and Laura have given so much to the camp community that we decided it was time to give back to them and thank them for all of their great ideas and service and passion for camp by getting this together. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you've missed other webinars or you want to revisit this one or you're going to miss the ones tomorrow, we will be recording everything and posting them in a password protected site online for you to do or to view. And on the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a chat bubble. So if you want to ask questions, make a comment, please utilize that and we'll be monitoring it throughout the course of the webinar. So Jack, is there anything you want to say before we let Steve and Andy introduce themselves?
Just thanks the two of you for being here. I've been watching you two present and taking notes during your sessions since I was, oh my gosh, 19. Steve, even earlier. Steve, this is true. When Steve first started his speaking career, before he knew anything, he got tricked into coming to my camp for probably $50 when I was a seasonal staff member. And
what camp?
At Camp Stellamar. It's in upstate New York. and he showed up and blew the roof off, and I just loved everything he was talking about. And we changed. How many people have heard Steve say, "What's next? How can I help?" Right? That became the huge culture at Stella Maris as a result of Steve's telling me that, or telling all of us that, and then me making everyone do it. Which so Steve.
And Jack says it all the time. Like if you actually run something with him, it just always comes out of his mouth. So
right.
It's cool.
Let's hustle, baby. Let's hustle. And then Andy started camp, and which seems like an impossible thing to do. So there's only a handful of people that I know personally that have really started and like run awesome, successful camps. And so Andy's got to be at the forefront of that list of badass people that have kind of done that. So thanks the two of you for being here. And you probably don't realize the enormous impact you've had on Stomping Ground and on me over the last 10 or so years. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
This is like the warm and fuzzy webathon. I'm just
happy to be here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, what Sarah said is so true. I mean, we're so happy to give back,
So let's get started, Kurt.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, Andy, what do we need to know about you? Some quick facts before we listen to your ideas.
Well, I guess I'll sort of frame it in within the title or the topic of this thing here. So I think the one really cool thing about what I've done in camping is starting a camp. A camp of over 1,000 kids in an area where there had been zero camp culture. Right. So getting the uninitiated in, right, getting the neophytes to buy into this camp thing, whether it's from trickery or whatever. But the fact is that customer service is a huge part of that, because I can't take anything for granted. These people, the parents never went to camp. The kids never went to camp. They don't know what this camp thing is. They think it's really expensive, and they're not quite sure it's worth it. And to me, the customer service thing starts way before the first couple of days. It starts with the whole onboarding process, because that makes the first couple of days work. Because you could tell them forever that the first couple of days are going to be hard. And we have a huge inclusion program. We have 130 kids in an inclusion program. And for those kids, it's going to be really hard on their first couple of days, right? And you could say that until you're blue in the face. But if you prep them and let them know how hard it's going to be, and prep them for the questions and for their kids' exhaustion, because I run a day camp. So these kids are coming home completely wiped out. They don't want to go back. Think about what I'm doing at my day camp. I'm taking kids who are 99.9% indoor kids, because that's what most kids are today. And I am making them 99.9% outdoors, like that. I'm basically sending kids to boot camp, right? And if it's 100 degrees and maybe raining, right? It literally is like boot camp in many ways. So customer service communication and customer service have to be a key. So other thing about me, I started a second day camp up in Massachusetts. This year will be our 10th year. I helped start a sleepaway camp, like a hippie camp up near West Point, all organic food and all kinds of stuff like that. No electronics, like literally they have no electronic music. They play all their music live. And I was the president of American Camp Association, New York, New Jersey, and I ran Tri-State Camp Conference for many years. So that's me in a nutshell.
Great. Thanks, Andy. So my name's Steve Maguire, and this will be my 16th summer facilitating camp trainings for camps all around the country. And I started my business because I sat through so many professional development experiences that I used to call poke me in the eye events, because poking me in the eye would have been less painful than sitting through those trainings. And one of my sort of missions as a trainer and consultant is just to make things fun and engaging and give people some takeaways and be practical and no fluff and just kind of tell it like it is and have a lot of fun. And I'm also a full-time school teacher. This is my 23rd year teaching. I've been at the middle and high school level, but I've been at the high school level for the last 19 years. So
you still got the ID badge around his neck because it's only 3.
Correct. I just walked out the door. Psyched to be here. And one of the joys for me is that I never envisioned, and Jack and Sarah have heard me say this so many times, that I never envisioned 16 years ago the level of friendships and joy that I would get from doing the business side of it. I just figured I do a bunch of trainings, and that would be great, but I didn't realize the friendships that have developed over the years. And it's great. Like Andy and I literally have seen each other for like 13 years. It's always been in the Sheraton lobby and be like, hey, we should get together. Hey, we should get together. And the times we've done some, the last couple times we've done his show, the Day Camp.
Day Camp podcast. Thanks for plugging it. Thanks for plugging it.
The last time, that's been the most we've ever talked, but we're planning on getting together.
Yes.
Because I'm sure everyone cares about my social schedule.
You guys are watching the beginnings of a beautiful friendship right here.
Great. Good stuff.
So, and isn't that friendship question in a certain way or that relationship question in a certain way, all about what that first impression piece of camp is, right? Like, I feel like when I first am contacting with my camp parents, I want them to feel like they have a relationship with me, or I could be a trusted part of their family, or a trusted kind of co-parent in a certain way for the time in the summer when their kid is with me, right? But how do you go from someone on the internet, to someone who could be like a trusted co-parent? And so let's kind of start from the very beginning with what Andy was saying with that onboarding. How does onboarding move from simply functional, I got to get the forms, I got to get the immunization records or whatever, to I got to get the trust, and I got to get the relationship started. So what's the difference between camps that do just the first and camps that do both?
Steve and I are both so ADHD. I know either of one of us can wait for the other to talk, but I'm going to start. So trust is the big word, Sarah. That's the big word, right? And if you can't, and when there are issues, and there are inevitable issues, inevitable bumps in the road that are going to happen. Some of them, just like the most ridiculous, stupid little thing that we take for granted, but for that new parent, a monstrously huge thing, right? And if there's no trust, then the whole thing, forget about it. The kid might as well not go to your camp anymore, because it's just going to be a miserable experience for everybody involved, especially the poor kid who just wants to go to camp and have fun, right? But the parents are making it tough, right? So it's very important that there is a trusted person that parent can go to, right? And there's all levels of camps and camp directors and this and that, and everybody's got their point people and their titles and all that weird thing. I don't care what it's called, who it is, somebody has got to be there for that person, right? Somebody's got to be there for that person to email, to text, to call, whatever it is, to be able to get a response and to know it's going to be a caring person that about that. It's not just some eye in the sky kind of thing. So yeah, the relationship may have started with a little chat thing popping up on a Stomping Grounds corner saying, hey, you got a question about camp? And but it can't be that. It's got to be a name. It's got to be a face. It's got to be a person. And, when it's a small camp, then it can be the camp director, right? But by the way, there's all kinds of camp directors. There's camp directors that are introverts that want nothing to do with the parents, and then hire somebody to be that person, right? Just to go all the way to the farthest level, like I'm friends with a guy that runs a 1,500 person per day camp, and they literally have camp concierges in charge of little sections of the camp. And those people are communicating to the parents throughout the day with push notifications and crap through their smartphones. Like, that's Jetsons, and that's relatively impersonal if you ask me, but that's what you got to do when you got thousands of people involved in a situation. But the point is, there needs to be that point person, and it needs to be identified, and that person needs to reach out to them and let them know, here's your lifeline. Because when you're worried about something at 9 o'clock at night, I might not get back to you right away, but it'll come to me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, and I'll give you a good answer.
I have just one really tangible, simple idea that I do. One thing I didn't realize, I am educated as a teacher, and I have zero business background whatsoever, which is so fun. And one of the things that has been an important piece for me is, as soon as somebody reaches out to me via email, I immediately call them as quickly as I possibly can. I don't email them back first. And if I can do it as rapidly as possible, I'm amazed. If I call somebody back within getting an email within 2 or 3 hours, people are shocked. They're like, oh my God, wow, thank you so much for getting in touch with me. So calling them before emailing them back is one of the first things I do. The other piece I do that I've done for 16 years, which is so old school, but I don't know if anyone knows this or not, but they still deliver the mail, which is great. So I literally write, even if it's a possible client, even if it's somebody that is just inquiring about my services, I send them a handwritten note of thanks so much for our conversation today. I appreciate being considered for this conference or your camp training or whatever, and send it along within like typically on the day or the next day of that contact. And I learned this actually at Jack's camp. I spoke at Stella Maris at one point. It was, I don't know if it was the ACA Upstate Conference or there was some conference hosted there at Stella Maris. And I remember packing up my stuff and getting ready to walk out the door. And there was a group of 10 people sitting around the table, all discussing the day's speakers and giving feedback about them. And that handwritten note was reinforced to me because the decision-making process, and this goes to your camp, the decision-making process for parents that are, and caregivers that are going to have their kid choose to go to the camp still comes down to human beings. Like there's a person still making that decision. With all the technology we have today, it comes down, like if you get a good vibe from somebody or you're like, wow, this person's on top of their game, you probably want to work with them. Or if you feel like you're being blown off or it's totally impersonal, you don't want to work with them.
Well, it's a lot harder to be mean to someone when you know who they are, right? Yeah, when you trust them, right? I want to interject on Grandpa over here with his old school methodologies. No, I'm all about the handwritten note, Steve. I really am. But I've done a lot of research in regards to communicating with my parents. And as a day camp, right, think about it. I got parents of like 4-year-olds, right? Those parents might be 30 years old. Right. So I have a wide range of ages for my parents. It really cuts across generations. Right. I literally have I have like Gen X, all the way through, Gen up to baby boomers and all. And some of them don't want to be bothered by your phone call. Right. And my methodology when I started this, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, doing this camp thing, I was all about the phone calls. And it's like, I have just been taught by these parents in their 30s, to the point that I literally, we got a phone call from one of these parents once who was a doctor and somebody was making like a good call, your kid's doing well, kind of thing to this parent. And the parent called back and said, if I get another goddamn phone call from your camp, I'm pulling my kids out of your camp. I don't care how much they love it. Stop bothering me. Send me a text, send me an email, stop bothering me. Right. So that's really important when we think about how we're communicating. And going back to that Jetsons camp I was telling you about, they're literally communicating through push notifications, right, all day to people that way, right? And I know that Camp Minder's doing their little camp, whatever they're calling it now, their app, that it's going to be like that too. So I think that people are trained on emails now, and as impersonal as they can be, and as much as they can be misconstrued, that's how they're expecting a lot of the communication. And a lot of our middle management, a lot of our people that we've set up to be these point people of communication, these liaisons, these lifelines to these parents, they don't even know how to talk on the phone, Steve. Like they haven't gotten that training. Like they're 37-year-old teachers and all they do is write emails to people, right? And all they do is text their friends. I put them on the phone and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, don't say something stupid, because they haven't been trained. Like we as camp professionals have to train them to talk on the phone if they're going to be talking on the phone, because that is not something that comes along now with being a teacher, right? The teachers that you have now that are in their mid-40s, yes, it was for them, because 20 years ago, that's all they had was a phone, right? But the ones now, it's a whole different ballgame.
So there's a study that I like to talk about out of Harvard, and Amy Cuddy was one of the researchers, and the study talks about how people make a snap judgment about you, which we hear a lot, but oftentimes people judge you on 2 criteria. They want to know, especially in a situation like this, are you competent and are you warm? So like this judgment of warmth and competence. And I think if you're able to talk on the phone or meet with someone in person, it's easier to exude confidence on both warmth and competence. But if you're only doing e-communication or text communication, it becomes a lot harder to do. And so I guess I wonder if we are moving in that direction and we're thinking about making first impressions and I can't get face-to-face or phone time with parents, how do I show that I'm nurturing and I know what I'm doing, and you can send your kid to me versus I'm just some other.
I think a lot of that answer, look at the Stomping Ground stuff that Jack and Laura put out. A lot of great videos. I think that short videos are awesome. And I think that's one of, I've had to start recording a lot of things and making short YouTube videos and sending them out to my staff and my parents on a repeated basis. And that's sort of a supplement to me, to them actually taking my phone call.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really good point. And the key thing you said to that is short, just from a, I just know if I look at a video that's over 4 minutes long, I think to myself, that's too long. But just a quick hitter that you can easily put together that people love. Yeah, I love it.
That's what I got.
No, that's
Wait,
good.
I want to come back to the phones things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've heard Andy say this a lot of times. We still call all of our parents, and I'm the youngest person on this call by some of us by a lot.
By barely, Jack.
All right. But Jack, you run a sleepaway camp, okay? If I was sending my kid away in a UPS box to you for even a week, okay, you're damn right I'm taking your phone call, okay? But if your camp was literally 20 minutes down the road and I'm at work with a client, right, don't bother me unless my kid's bleeding out.
Okay. This is when we make most of our phone calls. We make most of our phone calls when people register, right? And I kind of agree with you. And I actually just posted in our Slack while we were talking to Clee, who does most of our phone calls. What if we changed our policy from call and leave a message to call and then hang up and then just text them right away instead of leaving the message?
Yeah, don't leave voicemails. That's a great point.
Because what I don't want our families to think is that they can't call us. Because I don't care about actually talking to them, right? I want to communicate with them, and I don't care about getting them on the phone, but I do want them to feel like they can call us whenever they want to. And I think, Andy, you've done a great job of creating that culture at your camp, and I'm just thinking about how I can apply it for me.
Yeah, you know what? I just going to say, because I'm reading some of the comments, right? And I get it. This is it's a blend, guys. It's a blend, right? Camp is old school. There's kids outside playing in nature, jumping in water, right? Getting, lice and things grabbing onto them in the water and all that kind of great stuff, right? Yes, I'm sitting here talking about expounding on texts and emails, and God, I hate them, all right? But yes, phone calls are important, and you have to know when, you have to train your staff on when that phone call is important, okay? That's really important. We train all of our staff to write postcards home on the kids' last week of camp. They go home with the kids, and they're the most gut-wrenching, amazing postcards you've ever seen. And it's so old school, and these parents have never received anything of that, God forbid, from a 20-year-old, right, that knows their kid inside and out from only 2 weeks, right? They're home runs. They're so amazing. So I do believe that it is a blend. You do need to talk to people on the phone. You do need to write handwritten cards, right? It's just, it's a multi-generational thing, and you don't know who you're hitting up and when and all that. And you have to come at them from all different angles.
And I also think it's worth, if you look at, everybody loves free stuff. I'm talking like the easiest things in the world. I am trying to give some pragmatic ideas for folks that if you're looking for some customer service stuff, but whether it's, a calendar or a t-shirt or something, even to just, at the worst case, they don't sign up for your camp. They've gotten something from you that says they appreciate the positive interaction they had with you. And I'll tell you, here's another big one for folks that are watching today. Let's go a level before that. Let's go. People are taking a tour of your camp. I'm amazed how many clients I work with where I always ask them, where do you end your tours? They're like, oh, we finish here in the main office. I'm like, why would you ever finish your tour other than in the most beautiful place on your property? I'll give you a great example. So the Chile camps in Colorado, like if anybody knows anything about them, one of the most beautiful places on the planet to go to camp, right? And they have one of the most extraordinary views you could possibly imagine. And I remember saying to them when I went out there, look at this. This is your closer. Like, finish up with shaking the hands and giving the free t-shirt while you're looking over the Rocky Mountains, right? Instead of looking at someone's laptop, you know? So if you want like a really pragmatic idea for those things, those, like, it's little stuff like that I think is really helpful from an impression standpoint. And again, if you don't get the kid or the client or the family, they are going to finish with a positive impression of you. They're going to feel good about it. And for whatever reason, you're too far away, you're too expensive, I don't know. But maybe they come back in 2 years with a younger sibling who now is more interested in your place. It's just a couple pragmatic things. I've been
on 10 sleepaway camp tours, and they always seem to end at the canteen with an ice cream.
Yeah, you're like.
But so we end ours at a really pretty like campsite area where we make s'mores with the kids. That's how we wrap it up.
Right.
But yeah, it's cool.
Well, let's talk about the tour a little more. Like, like if you're at a sleepaway camp, even if you're at a day camp, can we give folks some water along the tour?
Right.
You know, what are other things that we can do that show that, hey, we take care of people here?
It's a good point, Sarah, too. But also, I think people's tours are too long. Like, people want to see a cabin, which is incredibly important. They want to see beautiful views. They're not interested. I mean, they ahead of time, you should know a little bit about what the kid is interested in participating in. Give them the option to go to a couple different places. But I've had people that have given tours that are like over an hour, which I don't care how big your property is. Right, Sarah. People are walking in the heat, miserable, and by the end of the tour, they're like, I'm physically exhausted, which is impacting how I feel about this place. You know, like, keep it simple, make everybody feel good, put in enough invested time, but then wrap it up and make people feel good about their experience when they finish.
I've been on Jack's soapbox all day about like choice and consent, right? But so many of the things that we've been talking about have to do with choice. So talking about communications, how do we understand how people never want to be contacted? How do we text people before that phone call and say, hey, I'd love to tell you about something awesome little Andy did today. Give me a call when you've got a chance, or text me if you want to talk later, or text about it, right? And so then the ball's in their court. They're enticed to do the thing, and they're not annoyed or freaked out when they get the phone call from you, or asking people what they want to see on the tour, or giving them 3 options. Do you want the 15-minute, 30-minute, or the 45-minute, right? 3 different routes for the tour, just like showing them choice, I think is like an ultimate customer service technique. And if we're talking about millennial parents, what millennial parents are used to. So kind of.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of camps now that on the registration forms, it's a question. How do you want to be contacted? You know, I don't use that question because I would have a hard time staying with it with the amount of kids that we have, you know? But yeah, it's very true. And what you said about texting people first and saying, hey, give me a call. I want to tell you a story about what happened at camp today, kind of thing, is important. But I go back to in something I learned from a colleague, Josh Mail, who runs Gate Hill Camp up in Rockland County, New York, that he created with Jay Frankel, a one-pager thing for his leadership people of what is an email versus what is a call, right? Because these people were, they just wanted to digitize everything because it's the easy way out, right? It's passive aggressive about things, right? When there's really hard conversations to be had. And, you know, when I started my camp, when it was all phone calls and I was like huge on face-to-face, mouth-to-mouth customer service kind of thing, I used to tell the parents that when your caller ID pops up and it says Liberty Lake Day Camp, like, don't have a heart attack. You know, it might be us telling you something great about what happened at your kids someday, right? Because as a parent, I know that when my kids were in school, if I saw like the Plumstead Township schools pop up on my phone, I could tell you it was one of 2 things. They're either in trouble or they're hurt. Those are the only reasons the school would call me, right? So I wanted to be different than that. But I have learned that these millennial parents are telling me, I mean, because Again, I did research. I solicited them. I asked them this point blank. They said, you know, if something happens and we need to talk during the day, like, how do I get in contact with you? And it was like 60%. It was It was text. 60% was text, and then 30% was emails, and then it was like 15% phone calls. So that's how they want the initial thing. So I love Sarah's idea of reaching out to them digitally and saying, hey, when can we talk, kind of thing. I want to tell you about, I need a little help. We need to work on something together, or some kind of thing that's not like a horrible voicemail like you were insinuating before.
Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Well, I was going to ask you a question, Steve, so go ahead.
I was just going to give everybody a pragmatic idea about training when it comes to customer service. So I do a lot of, this is really no-brainer stuff, but you'd be amazed how many people don't do it. So you should do, and I recommend to everybody, you should do at least one session about general customer service, meaning, asking questions to your staff in small groups of what's a great customer service experience you've had and why, what's a really difficult customer experience you've had, or customer service experience you've had and why, and put, literally put up the question, how did that make you feel? And then if you set the foundation with that and then turn that into, okay, what does that look like here at our camp? So what does great customer service look like here at camp? Well, it's move-in day. Everybody's in front of their bunks. Everybody's, looks nice, and people are greeting people and reaching out and saying hello and how can I help you? At a day camp, great example for Andy from a day camp standpoint. I think I told Andy this story about a month ago. Had a client, had a great idea. At the end of the day, as the buses were leaving, they would have staff members wave to all the kids, have a great afternoon, but they never rotated the group of staff. So by July, none of those staff were engaged. It was like the zombie goodbye. So half the group wasn't even looking at the kids as they left. So I think we really have to make customer service a part of the actual training event during staff training, whatever that looks like for you, and then convert the positive and negative experience they've had into a camp setting.
It's very important. Ever since my first year here, I was really lucky. I had a camp parent that worked for Subaru, and she was in charge of customer service, and she came and spoke to us, and I've been taking pieces of her Disney-ish kind of customer service stuff into my practice every single year. And a couple of the metaphors I use, one of them is comparing like the corner bodega going to get a coffee versus going to a Starbucks. Like I need something that's going to click for these people, because a lot of my staff have never been to camp either, and they really don't understand what I'm talking about when I mean customer service. Because it's really easy for people to think to downplay customer service because it's camp. Oh, it's camp. Kids fall. What's the big deal? Oh, you get dirty. Oh, you scrape your knee. Like, that's great. That's how you feel, but that's not how the parents feel necessarily, right? I'll tell you, I was working at North Shore Day Camp out in Long Island, and it got sold while I was working there to Jay Jacobs, who's known for customer service. And Jay came in, and he was asking all these questions about customer service, and we were like, "Oh yeah, we give great customer service. What are you talking about? Oh, you kidding me? Yeah, we're the best at it." All that kind of thing. And he said, "How many of you guys ever been to Nordstrom's?" And we were all these like poor assistant camp director guys. We're like, "Never been to Nordstrom's." He's like, "Here you go," and he. Typical JJ, because he pulls out his wallet. He gives us each $200, like $200 bills each. And he was like, okay, I want you to all go to Nordstrom's. I want you to bust their chops, ask them a lot of questions, buy yourself some things. And I'm going to come back next week. We're going to talk about the experience. And for someone like me who had never been to Nordstrom's before, holy mackerel, what an eye-opening experience, right? To really see what it means for people to really care about, and to just compare that to like JCPenney's or the other kind of places that I was at. It was mind-opening. And so I really agree with what Steve's saying, that customer service needs to be you need to draw metaphors. You need to connect the dots for people to explain and show them what that looks like at camp, what that means at camp.
You also got to find your people too. Like, I don't know how else to say it that way, but so I'll give you a great example. Kids coming off the bus should be greeted by an outgoing, gregarious, fun, engaged person. With next to them, however you do attendance, next to them, the checklist, keep everything organized person. I've seen kids coming off the bus as someone's just taking attendance, barely engaged with them. So now the day begins with just boredom, instead of when it should be greeted with joy.
There's day camps now that are shooting barcode readers at kids as they're coming off the bus.
Like, you got to find your people in training to put out in the right places to do that. Everybody's got their obviously strengths and weaknesses that they're really good at, but you got to get your people out there that really put it out and are a ton of fun, that can engage people in that setting, then they're comfortable doing that. That's such an important piece.
Yes, and the older I get and the wiser I get, and the more I realize I don't realize anything that I don't know. Right. The more I realize that this is so relevant. Everything we talk about in camping about kids is so relevant for staff too. And you really have to do it for them also. You can't just tell your staff to be these great customer service people and then be treating them like crap. Also, it really has to be across the board. You got to frame it as a whole thing.
Yep. Totally agree.
So speaking of that, I was at Maguire the other night, which is like a Target or something. It's like a Michigan company. And I like to price compare, et cetera. And I was purchasing toilet paper, and it said, if you bought, you get $5 off if you buy $20 worth of toilet paper. So I did, and it didn't come up on the receipt. And so I said to the cashier, oh, like the coupon didn't ring up. What's going on? And she's like, oh yeah, it didn't. She went through it, and she was like young, and she's like an entry-level worker at Maguire. And she's like, I'll just take it off. And she said to me, I have $5 empowerment. And I was like,
yes.
Thinking to myself, I was like, she totally wasn't supposed to say that. Yeah. But I was like, this is awesome, right? Like Maguire, it would have taken like 15 minutes for her to get a manager and run to the back of the store and like figure it out. And she just had the empowerment from Maguire. So I guess my question is, what are other ways that we can empower our camp staff to be able to handle issues, to be able to handle things, to provide a better customer service experience? What are our $5 empowerments? No skin off our back. Oh, that's like a horrible phrase thinking about it. Skin off my back. Never saying that again.
See, this is the 11 hours of the telethon thing kicking in now.
No sweat to Maguire that this random cashier gave me a $5 off coupon. It actually would have been harder for them if she didn't, and they had to sort it out. Right. So any ideas for $5 empowerments?
That's great. Well, first of all, I want to say there's a fast food restaurant down south. I forgot the name. It's the one with the big hot dog on the top of it that empowers their people, like even their high school kids, all the way up to $150 birthday party at a kid's house that they could empower them to. So way more than $5. So that's a thing. That's a customer service retail thing now that I love. It's a very difficult question for me, Sarah, to give you an answer on. I think it's easier for me to sort of reverse it and say, like, I think it's easier to tell people like what are like the absolute you can't do's, and then everything else is possible if we figure out a way to do it. Right. So like at my camp, like you can't pick up your kid between 3 and 4 o'clock. Like there's just all these safety reasons. And we have these reasons for it's like a blackout period. Right. And, we don't give refunds for certain things and whatever, but really big picture, like I do want people to be creative and be able to think things through. Like, again, thinking about like what we're trying to teach kids and trying to teach kids and trying to teach staff the same thing. We're trying to teach kids to be creative and collaborate and come up with solutions and stuff like that. Like we want our staff to be able to do that same thing too. If it's not going against the mission of the camp, I want people to be creative and all that. And I don't, as a supervisor, I don't want someone coming to me and asking me, should we do this? Should we do this? Should we do this? Should we do like, I don't want that either. I think that's a great aspirational kind of question that needs to be presented to your staff and to at least empower them and give them the okay to come up with solutions for things that aren't going to rock the boat, too much. But I think you sort of have to we need to draw some lines of like where they can't go.
A number of years ago, I was flying next to a guy that he looked sort of like upper 30s, early 40s. He was with his wife and we got to talking and I said, oh, what do you do for work? And he said, I'm retired. And I totally perked me up, right? He looked really young to be retired. He's like, yeah, we built this amazing company and sold it to 3M. And for those who are not familiar with 3M is a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing company. And I said, well, what was your thing? Like, what was your big customer service takeaway? Like, what did you do? He said, with every client, we always said yes. And I said, I'm sorry, what? He's like, our response to all of our clients was yes. And I said, well, tell me more. He said, whatever ideas people came up with, we did our best. If it was reasonable, we did our best to say yes and make that happen for them. And I said, well, how often do you get burned? He said, a couple times for a lot of money, but in the big picture, you know, and then he said, I'm 42 and now I'm retired, you know, and our whole thing was, his whole thing was, we always said yes. But what Andy's bringing up is a great point. What does the yes look like? So what does that $5 thing look like? What does the yes look like of, oh, you know, I see it all the time of, oh, I forgot to pay for this. And, you know, talking about a $2 or $3 item, like, no problem. You're all set. Have a great day. You know, like, what is teaching our staff what the yes looks like and what they can say and do for clients, or for even for customers and for parents and caregivers, that makes it easy for them.
Right. Because from a staff person, like it's really easy for administrative team to say, hey, the customer's always right. Right. That's something I sort of grew up with that. The customer's always right. But by the same token, as a camp director, you know, I also like saying, well, the inmates don't run the asylum either. Right. You know, and, you know, even at Camp Stomping Grounds, when they come up with, you know, the rules, when they're making rules on the first night, right, there are certain things like you can't bully people, like that's out of the question, right? You know, like there's certain no-fly zones in this. But you do want to try to be able to make things happen and work. It's a great question, Sarah. Awesome.
I think that, Kurtz, we did this thing where and this is a very standard thing that lots of people have probably thought of, but Clee, who's our new assistant director, who's incredible, is brilliant. She's also 22 and hasn't experienced like a lot of things, was blown away. She thought it was brilliant. And it was really simple. We just picked like 20 of our like best moms and sent them a care package that said they were great mom, or that they were super moms, with the t-shirt and, you know, whatever, and a handwritten note. And Clee kind of thought it was dumb at first. You could tell she did. She was like, why am I doing all this work and all this stuff? And then it like got posted, like all of them posted on social media and all the things, right? And so part of it, I think, is like modeling a little bit of what like that intuitive ROI, or the return on investment, is going to be for some of this customer service. Because most of the people who work for me aren't thinking to themselves, if I spend $20 now, that can lead to the camper coming back next year, which is an $823, you know, like all of that. And that's why the customer service works, because there's an equation that is, you know, we want to do a good job, but if there's not math to back up these people coming back,
correct.
If everyone's paying $10 to come to camp, and that's the only people that we're making happy, like then that doesn't work, right? So for us, we have to bring people back to camp. That's our key performance indicators, camper weeks. And we don't care if they're scholarship weeks or not, because that's our mission. But like that's what feeds the beast for us, is kids coming back to camp. So anything we can do that brings kids back to camp or brings a new kid to camp, we should do. And from a customer service standpoint, that's all the normal customer service stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're bending over backwards for people that aren't potential customers of ours, or who aren't potential donors of ours, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think helping model that for our staff, pushing them to try something, or bringing them along as during a complaint so they can see how that's all processed, helps them to be able to model that in the future. Because our camp's too small to have standard processes for all this stuff. It has to be intuitive. It has to be person-based.
Yeah, and like Jack is saying too, and I appreciate Jack saying this a lot, is that particularly for the owners and big decision makers that are watching this afternoon, they know this, but maybe some of the younger folks that, or not administratively high folks that are watching too, that the business element of this is huge. So, you know, I look at on the smallest scale, when I finish with a client, I use a local company, and that makes cupcakes in a jar. Like, they're amazing, right? And I've used them for 5 or 6 years. And I'm sure, like, as soon as I'm done with a client, depending on how large their office staff is, I send a package of those to them with a thank you note that says, you know, talks about something that our experience was like. And here's why I do that. 1, because I'm grateful for the work. 2, Jack just said it. It's not going to break my bank based on what, you know, what a client is paid for me to do work for them. And you're building positive relationship with people. Like if if something shows up a week later after I've done work with them, or a week after summer ends at a family's house, they're now eating cupcakes saying, wow, that was really fun. This is nice. And there's a human element to that of, wow, I want to return to that place because this makes us feel good talking about it. And, you know, I've had some people push back and say, oh, you're buttering people up or whatever. Like, that's fine. You can believe that. But Jack just said it. There's a business part of it. And that return on investment is huge if you can depend on those families or campers every year.
I got a phone call about 5 minutes after the last time I donated to Camp Stomping Ground, thanking me for my generous donation. It was pretty damn cool, I have to say.
So sometimes when I think about customer service, I equate it to this other dirty word that's networking, right? So like if we tell camp folks they need to network, they feel like really, slimy about it. Like it's just a means to an end. And so customer service, again, like what you guys were saying, kind of feels that way too. Like, is this genuine or not? And I put this quote in the chat from the LL Bean CEO, but it's just saying customer service is a day in, day out, ongoing, never ending, persevering, compassionate kind of activity, right? And so if we think about customer service as just like human compassion, and making like human connections with other people, I just feel like that really helps, especially because customer service isn't always preventative. A lot of times it's reactive, and then our emotions can get high. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where I was taking that. It sounds like you also had some input there.
I got a question, Jack. Does Stomping Ground have a vision statement or a mission statement?
Yeah, we're inspiring the next generation of radically empathetic decision makers.
Right. That's what I thought. So I think when you have a good vision statement like that, I think that helps guide customer service. It really does. So we don't have such an awesome one as yours, but I do have 5 star points that people see repeatedly when they come down my driveway and on everything we have. And it's integrity, independence, teamwork, aspiration, friendship. And when people ask me things like customer servicey kind of things, or they ask my office staff these things, I want them to equate it to that. I want them to make the decision based on that. And I think that's what a lot of good businesses do. I think if they come up with a good vision statements, a good mission, and you gear things through that lens, that will help you make those decisions, right? So when a parent calls you and says, can you basically make up a BS invoice for me from 3 years ago that says, well, like, no. Like, how could we do that? Because I'm trying to teach your kids to be like honest, and then you want me to give you a dishonest piece of paper, So, oops. So anyway, I think a good mission vision statement is very helpful with that.
And that also makes it authentic, right? Like, I'm not just making this decision because I want to make this person happy. I'm making this decision because it's aligned with my values of camp. One of them is empathy or compassion or integrity, right? And so anyone at any level of camp could use that as kind of like a test. Steve, what's on your mind?
Well, I also think, one of the things that again, kind of like on the pragmatic side of it for me is that from a relationship building standpoint, is that I like, because of the amount of friendships I've made with people over the years, I think learning depends on the level of, or the amount of families or campers that you have, whatever it is. I found that just the random, and we're talking about texting or whatever, a random text in March of, hey, just checking in, hope everything's going well. Even if it's not camp related, staying in touch with people about what's going on. Like I have a lot of friends through the years that I know follow certain sports teams, and if I see their team doing well, I'll send them a quick text. It's like they'll say like "Go Blue" or like whatever, that if I know that's a big deal. But just those little random acts of kindness, for lack of a better term, but you can replace the word kindness with connectedness. That random act of connecting with people, I think, makes a huge difference with people, particularly when I say to myself, wow, that person remembers what's important to me.
Yeah, communication. That's what it comes down to. you know, right? I mean, I said this up front at the beginning of this thing, this customer service is all about communication, right? And when you're running a sleepaway camp, like Camp Stomping Grounds, where you're trying to teach all this radical empathy and all this wonderful stuff, right? Like a part of it is actually lack of communication. You know, is like, that's actually part of what we do, right? And the same thing with a day camp, even though I'm dealing with people who are going home, you know, at the end of the day, you know, that's part of the relationship I'm creating with these kids and with these parents, is to separate them, and for these parents not to know what's going on with them during the day, that no news is good news. That's actually part of what I'm preaching here, right? But at the same time, good customer service is communication. So you need to communicate the lack of communication at times, and then know when to communicate, right?
Yeah, it's interesting too. It's you know, it's more of a philosophical thing too about chasing the almighty dollar. But I have a camp that I've worked with for years in Wisconsin that has 115 girls. That's it, right? And you know, I remember the first time I was on the property, I remember thinking to myself, oh, you could build a cabin here and you got space to do this, and more, you could do that over here, and this is incredible, and you could have 300 kids here. And he was like, just hold on. I don't want 300 kids here. I want 115 girls or 110 girls, right? Like, that's it. We don't want that. And now he's like, would it be awesome to get that revenue? Sure. But then our experience gets washed away of what we're trying to do. We can't be as good at what we do with more kids. And, and I'm certainly not, this is in no way pushing back at folks that I have plenty of clients, you know, I think that 1,500 camp client I've worked with before, but like, I'm not pushing away at that, but it's also like Andy said earlier, regardless of how big you get, always having some person to be able to connect with is huge.
I'm just going to go back again to my dichotomy, because this just keeps stemming from Sarah's unanswerable question. We're youth development experts, right? It goes back to trust. You're trusting us to be youth development experts. So some of this customer service that they may be demanding at times, or maybe requesting at times, may be in that no-fly zone, because in the end, we believe we actually do know what's best for your kids. Okay? Radical empathy is a heavy concept for a lot of people, and they would never send their kids to your camp. God bless. Right?
Right.
But at a day camp that, you know, we cast a net like we're going fishing, you know, we get a couple dolphins sometimes, you know, like people are going to go overboard on their expectations. And it's just really important for us to communicate to them. And when those moments come where, no, your kid cannot eat ice cream 3 meals a day, like, you know, we know maybe that's how you parent, but you're sort of giving them to us now to parent. And this is how we do it. And we're pretty successful, and we're pretty known for our care of children. So trust us, and it'll be fine. And if they don't buy into that, if they don't trust you, then that's it. Give your money back. Like, you know, then it's not going to work.
Well, Andy just said one of the hardest things about customer service, though, which is like, I can't be everything to everybody.
Yeah, you can't take everything personally, too. I think that's part of it, too. Camp people are really nice people. Look at us. We're like freaking 4 really nice people, right? Like you want to help people. You want to give them what they want. You want to satisfy. You don't want them being angry at you and all that. Oh, no, we're camp people. We have big hearts. We're warm and fuzzy, right? But at some point, you have to be a business person, too. And even like Jack's saying, he's a nonprofit. He's taking kids for $10. It doesn't matter. Like, you still got to stay true to your mission and to your business, you know, nonprofit or for-profit. So, yeah, I think that it takes time, but you develop a thick skin when it gets to this over time.
Well, and I think that it's just okay. You're not the right camp for us.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that's hard is knowing what those no-fly zones are, Andy. And I think it's like easy for me and you, because we get to run our camps. We get to
because we invented it, right?
Yeah, so we get to say, yeah, cool. Like at our camp, kids could sit and hang out in a hammock all day long, except for like a handful of times. They can do that all day pretty much. And we do a bunch of stuff where we come alongside them and we talk to them. We see if they want to do other stuff, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the kid sits in the hammock all day. They sit in the hammock all day. And parents call and they say, will you make my kid go swimming? No, we won't. And guess what? There's 10,000 camps that'll make your kid go swimming. You want me to send you to a link to 50 of them that are great camps? Cool. And you can go do that. But at our camp, we won't do that. what we might do at the other camps might not is like you call and say, hey, I really miss Johnny and I haven't seen a picture of him. A lot of camps would send back a paragraph long explanation of those things or whatever. I'll just go find Johnny. I'll send a picture. Here's Johnny in the hammock having a great time. You know, so like great. Like everybody gets to pick their no-fly zones, but you got to know your no-fly zones so that you can enforce them. And Kurtz, I know that there's only 5 minutes left, but I want to make a big announcement that's so fun.
Wait, what is it?
We just passed $10,000 raised.
Yes!
For this webinar. You all are amazing.
Wow, that's so cool.
Thank you, Steve, Andy, and Kurtz for being on right now. Thank you, everyone that donated. Holy, Kurtz, it's not family friendly anymore. Holy shit, this is awesome.
Censored.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
You guys are incredible. We're the luckiest people on the planet.
That is so cool.
Because of people like you. So thank you so much, everybody.
Well, should we make an announcement in the Summer Camp Pros group?
Definitely.
Okay.
That's amazing. I love it. Congratulations, you guys.
Cool. That's so much money.
Good job.
Thank you all so much.
Wow.
You're making it possible for kids to come to camp, and I really appreciate it. Back to the show. We got
the content. I mean, I guess my last question is, Andy, Steve, what's something that we didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about or share just in the last couple of minutes? Maybe each of you can give a turn, and then we'll conclude.
All right, I can do that. I would say, and someone mentioned money earlier. We were talking a little bit about money and the business part of it. This goes back to the always saying yes thing. And there's a lot of people that push back on this that really don't like me saying this, and that's fine. So my thought is, if anybody ever asks for a refund, ever, regardless of what time it is, if it's the day before camp starts or even after they've been with you for 8 weeks, the answer is always yes. And a lot of people push back and say, that's impractical. The revenue you return will be made tenfold down the road if you're doing the right thing. And if you disagree with it, that's totally cool. Like, let's talk offline about it. But I've always been somebody that, here's your stuff back. I hope that you find a better experience somewhere else. Wishing you the best in the future. And I know by doing that, the universe will pay me back way down the road.
I had a completely different one, but instead I'm going to piggyback on top of Steve's because there's a lot of truth there. And I want to go even farther. That when you look at most camps' stuff online, their registration things and all that kind of things, they're usually very black and white about the money things, right? And it's usually something to the effect of after May 1st, after June 1st, after whatever that arbitrary day is, you're never going to see your money again. That's it, and we're keeping this and we're doing this and all that other kind of crap, right? And part of customer service is like rolling out a red carpet of getting people to sign up. And it's also rolling out the theoretical red carpet of them leaving, right? Because there should be no pressure in that too, like Steve's saying. And when I talk to my colleagues about this kind of thing, and I say, so what happens like in the middle of the summer of this and this, and the parent just got deployed to go to Afghanistan or like, whatever, like some kind of things happen. It's life. Right. And 99% of the time, the camp professional looks at me and says, oh, we always give it back anyway. And I'm like, well, then why the hell don't you just tell them that? Like, why are you going to make these people have a hernia and a heart attack, like freaking out about these things that they're going to lose their money? Like they should go into this, especially people who have never been to camp before, right? If this is your great unknown, I mean, Jack, I assume you've gotten kids before that have never even gone to camp before, right? At Camp Stop around?
Over 70% of our kids have never been to any camp.
So imagine you're going to this place where the kids make their own rules, and Jack and Lauren look like they're 16 years old. This is going to be great, But Jack's like, after May 1st, you'll never see your money again, right? Like it's just not cool.
It's just wasted energy.
Why do that?
Why would you ever do that to someone?
It's just stupid. But I'm telling you, most people do that. It's crazy.
I know.
So just be upfront. Like if there's something, if something happens, whatever, we'll talk about it. We'll give you money back, whatever. We use any unused time. Just pay for what you use, like something like that. Like that's the kind of thing that's bad customer service before your kid even gets there.
Wow, I feel like this webinar should have been titled like bravery in customer service, right? Because there is a hump that you have to get over to do some of these things that we're talking about today. But I think once you do take the leap, you see certain benefits from that. So, okay, we have to conclude. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we started with the headset and we ended with.
You can go back to play.
I'm landing a plane right now.
No, you could listen. I just want you to know that while this webinar was going on, that Steve achieved 30,000 points in Fortnite. I want you.
That's correct.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, this is a question for the group. Please post in the Summer Camp Pros group about this eventually. Is Fortnite dead? Because that's what every kid I've talked to, Fortnite's dead.
100%.
So.
No, for real.
Steve's got 4 kids.
No, Steve.
No, you know what it is now? You know what it is now is they're going bonkers about Boom Beach. Boom Beach is back.
Boom Beach.
Yep. The kids I talked to, they were split about a bunch of games. That all the kids I've been talking to, there's no one monolith game at the moment, but TikTok's taking over. So.
Oh, can I also talk about one other super quick inappropriate app that you're going to see next summer? There's now, I can't make it up. It's super not family friendly, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a poop app that people are keeping track of people's poops and
I don't need to know more.
It's terrible. Please be aware of it for staff.
I need to know so much more, Steve. What's it called so I can Google it, please?
I'll talk to you about it later.
Yeah,
does it integrate with your Apple Watch?
Of course it does.
This is really bad.
I'm sorry to finish on that. I know, it's terrible.
No, an app about it, that is so bad.
I know, it's really, my high school kids literally, competing with each other. It's awful.
But what's the competition factors?
I know. It's Sarah. It's terrible.
I don't know. I have yet to. I'm not blown away yet.
But it's going to happen at camp. I'm telling you right now.
Just think about it. In 1 hour, Jack, we've gone from like unintentional racism at camp to poop apps. We're really the continuum.
Brain science.
This is our learning. Steve would say, Sarah.
I love
All right.
it.
This has been great fun. I need to go.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
I don't need to go to the bathroom.
It has nothing to do with the app.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.